All right, good to see you. My name is Mattias Sundin. I'm the executive chairman and co-founder of the Warp Institute. We have a very humble,
Hello, yeah, good.
humble goal of making the future come sooner. That's just our humble and small goal to make the future come sooner. In my previous job, I didn't go to my workplace in a t-shirt. So I looked like this in my previous job. I was a member of parliament. I had colleagues that really was interested in what I was saying, as you can see here on the picture. Half a year ago, I left politics, I left parliament, I didn't run for re-election because I thought my opportunity to impact the world was bigger outside of parliament than inside of parliament. That's not to diss politics. I experienced a lot of really interesting things in my years in politics. I met a lot of interesting people, from Barack Obama to Edward Snowden, traveled the world, visited a lot of interesting companies. And I had a lot of fun doing it. And maybe the peak fun was a couple of years ago when I actually tried to dance a little bit in Parliament. I was protesting a very bizarre law in Sweden that says if you're a restaurant owner, if you have a restaurant, and people start dancing in that restaurant, you need a permit. So I was trying to protest that law by dancing, and that was probably peak fun. Yeah, I think it was a good thing that I, didn't try to become a dancer, became a politician instead. That was peak fun, so it could only go down from there. So I decided to not run for re-election, and instead I started this organization, a foundation, the Warp Institute. And we are building a community, a global community of optimistic, forward-looking people to make the future come sooner. And the idea is to bring that kind of people together. And when we do that, there will be some really interesting and big ideas being born in that community. And we will try to take those most important ideas and make them happen together. So the big ideas, the moonshot ideas, we're trying to build a global moonshot factory out of this. And I'll try to explain a little bit my reasoning why I left politics and why I think the best way to impact the world in the future is not go through centralized power, but to decentralized power in communities, and using, of course, the internet and new technology to make that happen. But to explain that, we have to go back in time. So just for this occasion right now, I made a time machine. So we're going to go 2.5 million years back in time. So the place is Africa. It's 2.5 million years ago. The place then was covered in vast forests. And this is one of our first relatives. This was one of the first human beings on Earth, and they were really small, they were easily scared, and they lived mostly up in the trees, and there was a reason for that. On the ground, there were saber-toothed tigers, and we had no tools, nothing to defend ourselves, so we lived mostly in the trees. So back then, we had nothing of what we have today, none of the primitive tools even. We had nothing. To see some real progress, we have to jump into the time machine again and go back to the future and aim it for 100,000 years ago. And look at the progress now, and look at how slow it is. So what you saw there was of course, some major innovation controlling fires like that, but it took several 100,000 years, a million years between some major innovations. And why was that? That was because most of the ideas, if someone got an idea or invented something, it didn't spread to other humans, so most of the knowledge, most of the ideas died out. Not much lived on. But something happened 100,000 years ago, and now we've landed here. The place is still Africa, and this is us. This is the humans of today, the Homo sapiens. We had been then on Earth for about 150,000 years, but we hadn't done much. We haven't invented much at all. But something happened 100,000 years ago that really set off the pace of human innovation. And what happened was that enough people lived close enough together, so the ideas and the innovation started spreading, and other people started learning them. So for the first time, more knowledge lived on than died out. We started accumulating knowledge upon old knowledge. And suddenly, humanity took off like never before. At this moment, we couldn't even speak to each other. We didn't have a language. We didn't have clothes. But in the coming 100,000 years, we went from that to all of this. As you can see now, the pace of innovation has really picked up. Some major innovations in just a few thousand years, a few hundred years between them, because more and more people lived closer enough together so the ideas could spread. And of course, 600 years ago, about 600 years ago, the printing press. The first time it was really cheap and easy to start spreading knowledge around. Now we're landing in the year 1689. In England, outside of the Parliament. And we're stopping here on our journey because something else happened this year, or at least around this year, that set off a new increased pace of innovation like never before. In the coming 300 years, we had the Industrial Revolution, and we went from a very, very poor society where people lived only a little bit more than 30 years until what we have today, this great wealth, and we have more than doubled our lifespans ever since. So something happened here that increased the pace of innovation much, much more than the previous 100,000 years. And the thing was that we got our best idea, or we started implementing our best idea ever, the idea of democracy. For the first time in 1689, when they passed the Bill of Rights, they gave some rights, freedom of expression, to members of parliament that were elected by a small part of the population. So it wasn't much, but it was a first step. And from that step, we entered into the democratic era, where we now, thanks to that, have millions of more ideas. You have the right to your ideas, you have patents, you own your own ideas. So that set off a new era for humanity. And we call this era, of course, the Industrial Revolution. But I think that is wrong, because it wasn't an industrial revolution. It was a freedom of thought revolution. It was a freedom of ideas revolution. It was an ideas revolution. And we should have called this period in time the Idea Revolution, because that's what it really was. Yes, that gave us the Industrial Revolution, that gave us the Scientific Revolution, but it was an idea revolution. And one of the scientists behind the research that showed what happened 100,000 years ago, Mark Thomas, he wrote this: ironically, our finding that successful innovation depends less on how smart you are than how connected you are seems as relevant today as it was 90,000 years ago. And today, of course, we are better connected than ever before through the internet, and that's why I think the world is changing into new power players. The global communities is going to be the best way to exchange ideas, and therefore the best way to find innovation and impact the world. Today, we have centralized power in the world. This is the UN Security Council, the best symbol of this centralized power. But this is how the whole of society works. And it's been a really good model for many years. But I think that is changing now, and I want it to change now, because I think decentralized power is much better than centralized power. And through technology, we now have the opportunity to do that. So, one of the ideas in this community, one of the early ideas in the WARP community, is an actual moonshot idea, a real big idea. And it also is an idea, and we liked it so much because it really tests how hard things you can do in a community. So, and one of the hardest things you can do in this world is space exploration. So we're going to try to do space exploration in the WARP Institute. And space is the perfect example of what I'm talking about, because space used to be this. If you wanted to make space history, you needed to be the US president or the Secretary General of the Soviet Union 60 years ago. No one else could make space history back then except those two guys. About 20 years ago, it really helped, or you needed to be a billionaire or at least a multi-millionaire to be able to do space history. But today, now, we can do it here. You know, regular people can do it together in a community to have its own space program. And that's exactly what we're going to do in the WARP space program. So we have partnered up with a team called Beyond Atlas. And together with Beyond Atlas, we are going to send the first private mission to an asteroid. Never before has a private entity tried reaching an asteroid. It has only been nations before. But we are going to do this. And we are using crowdsourcing and crowdfunding to do it. We are using the technologies that are today. The knowledge to build the spacecraft and do the space mission is crowdsourced. Most of the people work pro bono in this, and we're crowdfunding the money. And I've learned that everything, of course, everything is relative, but in space, everything is very relative. So this is a relatively cheap mission. It costs only $3 million. We have raised $1.5 million so far, so we're going to send up the first test mission around New Year's. Then we're going to try to raise the next $1.5 million and send up the asteroid mission. So the next cheapest space mission out there is the Japanese. That asteroid mission costs $800 million. So ours is, we're going to lower the cost of space explorations by 98, 99%, something like that. And the goal here, and the reason to lower the cost of space exploration, is that we want to make the human future in space come sooner. We want to be a part of a spacefaring civilization. We want humans to be able to live out in the solar system. And if we are going to make that, we can't send up all the stuff here from Earth. Even if the cost for launches are coming down, it's still going to be really expensive to send up stuff in space. So we have to find all the resources, the water and the minerals and everything. We have to find them in space. And we know the asteroids are full of them, but we need to explore them much closer. And then it needs to be much, much cheaper, less expensive to explore. So our thinking is to do this with Beyond Atlas, this first test mission, and then the asteroid mission. But if we can do that, we of course could do it a third time, and a fourth time, and a fifth time. And if we can do all that, then we have our own space program. People have their own space program, where we together decide what missions to support. What's the most important missions? That's for the community to decide. Not for the experts, not for the presidents, for the billionaires, for the people in this space program, like you and me. So you're most welcome to join us at this website. You can sign up there, and we'll send your name in space for free. If you want to donate time or money or both, you're most welcome to be a part of this community and shape space history. And in this particular case, there's only one time that you will make history. There's only one time for the first private space mission to an asteroid, and that's now. Thank you.